starting a war there over this is just them using, making up their own definitions of what they want and taking it out on Venezuela.
Mm.
And let me point out, we do not do well against people that fight in flip-flops. And that country is a jungle. If they think that cruise missiles and, taking down the surface-to-air missile sites is going to knock that country down, it's going to go to the ground, and we are going to get engaged in something that'll make Afghanistan look like child's play.
The US Coast Guard has intercepted and seized a sanctioned oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela in a potentially serious escalation of the growing tension between the two countries. Donald Trump addressed the news in a press conference earlier this evening.
As you probably know, we've just seized a tanker on the coast of Venezuela, large tanker, very large. Largest one ever seized, actually. And other things are happening, so you'll be seeing that later, and you'll be talking about that later with some other people.
It's the biggest tanker ever seized. In the last hour, General Secretary? No. Anyway, Pam Bondi has posted to X an unclassified video of soldiers landing on the oil tanker via helicopter. Malcolm Nance, former US Navy intelligence officer, has seen the video, as have I. It's quite dramatic, isn't it, Malcolm? Welcome to the programme.
Yeah, it's a pretty standard video for those who don't see this too often, but this is called a VBSS, right? A visit board search and seizure. The U.S. Navy does this all the time. We did lots off of Yemen and in the Arabian Gulf, and the Coast Guard does it as well. But the Attorney General, the video she showed, actually showed a U.S. Navy helicopter landing a SEAL platoon on that vessel, which is also another standard way that we take down these ships.
And it was done safely, no injuries reported whatsoever. So let's turn to why this has happened. This was a sanctioned vessel that apparently has been sanctioned for a long time, which begs the question, why seize it now?
Well, certainly there are political ramifications in seizing it now, but this vessel, which is a VLCC, right, very large crude carrier. It is a huge oil tanker. I believe it was Comoros registered. The name is the Skipper, and it has been sanctioned since 2022, operating as part of the Iranian shadow fleet, where Iran had been shipping out large amounts of oil and shipping in, other things. And it was associated first with operations supporting Hezbollah in Lebanon. And that's where the initial sanction went on. And that's why Donald Trump made the comment that it was a terror tanker. Well, in fact, is part of the shadow fleet. It goes to Venezuela, where Iran and Venezuela have ties, and takes out the illicit oil from Venezuela. Why is it hard to find these ships? Because the world is big. People have no idea. Once you turn off the AIS, the automated identification system, the ocean, if they don't see you and it operates outside of major sea lanes, it's very hard to find you.
That's fascinating, isn't it? So obviously, Intel pointed out that this vessel was somewhere where the troops could get to it. I was just reading here that much of Venezuela's exported oil goes to China, sold at a steep discount, and that's another part of the trade that's been sanctioned by the United States since 2019. But the person this seems to be targeted at is Nicolas Maduro, the Venezuelan president, who has tanked the Venezuelan economy. He's hung on to power. He's cancelled democratic elections. He's not doing great things for Venezuela. But what's the US interest in this? Why should the US be intervening in this way, as it has done with the drug boats, which very controversially have involved fatalities after being attacked by American military? Why now is the Americans ramping up the pressure on this country and this particular president?
Well, Donald Trump has had a policy against Venezuela and Maduro in particular since 2017. And for the most part, we always used to hear that this was a political decision based on economic principles, the acquisition of oil. A lot of times that would have been dismissed. The United States policy for a very, very long time was about the spread of democracy. In this particular instance, there may be something to it. Venezuela has the world's largest crude oil reserves. It is not clean oil, but it is still there in the ground, larger than Saudi Arabia or Nigeria by far. And the Trump policy seems to be aimed more at, based on what the president himself has said, is acquiring that oil. Now, there is no casus belli for the United States to have been going out and sinking those small craft, because the Trump administration has redefined Maduro as a narco-terrorist. The last time we had a person designated that way was Pablo Escobar, a person who actually did carry out acts of terrorism, blew up civil airliners, assassinated politicians, used car bombs. Maduro is is an odious character, but he's not carried out any of these major acts of terrorism. And the United States has designated the drugs, once they are manufactured and are put into distribution system, as technically weapons systems that are impacting the people and population of the United States. And they're claiming that this is a way that they are killing Americans. Intelligence doesn't support that. Most of the drugs out of Venezuela go to Spain and for further transshipment to Europe via the Seychelles, by the islands off of West Africa. And most of the craft that we've sunk generally have originated in Colombia, especially the two semi-submersible submarines that they sank. However, we are not at war with Venezuela. And even though the Geneva Convention is applied at any time when you start an armed conflict, as the United States has, we, in no circumstance of war, are allowed to kill civilians. Working an illicit continuous criminal enterprise is not a capital crime that can be done without due process. But this administration is doing it.
I mean, these technical designations, which you so very helpfully spelled out to us, are they basically an attempt to try and give the lethal action that the Americans have been executing some kind of legal cover?
Sure. And there is no legal cover. This is the problem. The first thing that you'll hear when you say, hey, this is a extrajudicial killing, is you'll have, MAGA people come back and say, well, what about Obama when he was, killing the 2 U.S. citizens in Yemen? Well, there was an authorization of use of military force, which came out after 9/11, which allowed the United States to go after any terrorist group that espoused the ideology of Islamic extremism. And those 2 individuals, including the 15-year-old boy, were members of Al-Qaeda, the Arabian Peninsula, were in an active plot. We had a spy who was one of his best friends to kill Americans by blowing up civil airliners. So that was, as we would say, a clean kill. There is no basis for whatever it is we're doing. By redesignating drug payloads in boats, which is an illicit continuous criminal enterprise, as weapons, as Senator Tom Cotton says, they are killing American citizens. Donald Trump doesn't seem to even understand fentanyl does not come from Venezuela. It comes from China via Mexico.
You mentioned Donald Trump. I mean, Pete Hegseth is the defense secretary, or the war secretary, as he'd probably characterize it now. I mean, is much of this coming from him?
Well, no, this is all coming from the top, and this comes through the president. This is part of a broad strategy that they have to reestablish, and you would have seen it in the new national security strategy, a paltry 31-page document in which the United States is viewing its sphere of influence in the world as the Atlantic and the Pacific in the Western Hemisphere only, in North America, Central and South America, while giving up all of its obligations to Europe and only the countries in the Middle East that actually pay them. So this is a weird version of the Monroe Doctrine, which at the time it was fostered in the early 1800s, there were very few independent countries. Now every country is independent with its own armed forces. The United States could flex its muscles, but it would be retracting into a world where we have no trading partners, and that all of those nations, like Canada today, can go off and trade elsewhere. But starting a war there over this is just them using, making up their own definitions of what they want and taking it out on Venezuela.
Mm.
And let me point out, we do not do well against people that fight in flip-flops. And that country is a jungle. If they think that cruise missiles and, taking down the surface-to-air missile sites is going to knock that country down, it's going to go to the ground, and we are going to get engaged in something that'll make Afghanistan look like child's play.
That's really interesting. I was going to ask you what you think is going to happen next, not just to this oil tanker, but we're just seeing pictures come through of Maria Corina Machado, who is a Venezuelan opposition politician being awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. It looks like something is going to happen. I mean, what would you predict might happen next?
Well, Machado is an interesting character, even though she has been a tireless advocate for democracy in Venezuela. Her first act was to pander to Donald Trump because she wants the government overthrown. I think that if the Nobel Prize Committee had understood that she was in support of violent overthrow of the government, which will lead to people dying. There's a 100,000 man armed force. There's a 500,000 man militia. When you shoot bombs into countries, they don't just collapse, especially if Maduro decides to go into the woods and fight a guerrilla war. You can take the capital of Caracas, but you got to hold it. Opposition leaders like this tend to, gain some popular support, but Maduro has a lot of people there, and more than enough people there who might be willing to, come after her as well as anybody who is on the ground there. But Donald Trump has made it clear this is really about oil and reestablishing oil countries in Venezuela. He's using drugs as a premise.
Malcolm, great to speak to you. Thank you for your time. Malcolm Nance, former US Navy intelligence officer.